weekend recap at PPIR with GridLife. Got out there Thursday night, got the car unloaded and through tech and all that. I knew that heat was going to be a thing throughout the weekend because it was last year. It's so many problems last year with fueling and gas venting out of the tank and spilling and a whole bunch of other problems that I was really hoping I wasn't going to have this year. And right out of the gate, first session on Friday morning, go out, get a black flag, like 2 laps in, it's pushing gas out the overflow of the tank again. So I had to mock up a catch can type thing in the trunk and was able to just run the vent tube up into that, so at least it wasn't spilling on track, and took care of that. Another big problem that I have experienced for the first time now is understeer. Really haven't had to deal with that before, but I think removing my sway bar during testing the other week, which really increased the rear bite out of the car, played against me when we got out to Pikes Peak, and because of the altitude I was down on horsepower, and it was just, the track was getting warm and hot and greasy, and it had so much understeer and couldn't hardly drive through the infield whatsoever. But that is one of the things that I like about Pikes Peak International Raceway there, is it's such a Jekyll and Hyde, because up on the NASCAR banking, I mean, you got all the grip in the world, you feel like a hero, and then you hit the infield and there's none and you feel like a chump. Just so low grip compared to what's up on the banking. And I also was able to get back out on track for the next session. Got maybe 6-7 laps in, and then the temps started climbing up, and despite having a whole lot more ventilation out of the hood and ducting into the radiator than last year, it was still creeping up. Last year I could only get maybe 3-4 laps, and then it was really sky high on temperature, and instead this year it was just starting to creep up, and I knew I needed to do something a little different. What we ended up doing was I dropped the splitter off the car and I removed the license plate, and I cut a hole in the valance right behind the license plate, so at least I can cover that back up with a license plate as kind of a tuning device. And I had some of the cheap floor mats for like from Harbor Freight for $7 or whatever the hell they are, and I just laid those out, screwed them down to the splitter, and those made a new seal to the radiator air dam that I had underneath the car that I left on the car. I just cut it to clear the splitter, and I was able to then seal off the bottom of that so that the air coming in through the grill and through the new opening I made would not leak as much around the sides of that and force it up into the radiator. I went out for a third session at the end of the day. Still wasn't able to go any faster, but it was still being pretty consistent. I mean, it was only, I think, 6 or 7 tenths off of what I had run in the morning. And it was hot. It was, traction wasn't there on the infield. But the temps were staying down. And everything was going well right up until towards the end of the session, maybe 6 laps in, and the car starts cutting out. I had the car full of gas at the beginning of the morning, and I thought that was kind of weird, and it just barely made it to the exit on the grid off of pit lane, and it just died there. And I'm like, I don't know, it was acting like it was out of fuel, it couldn't get any fuel. It maybe started up and fire a couple times, and I ended up trying to cycle through the Holley Terminator display and found where my fuel pressure was reading, and I was only getting 15 pounds of fuel pressure. So luckily there happened to be a fuel pump in town. It just happened to be on completely the opposite side of Colorado Springs. Had a buddy I was pitting with. He was running a Honda Fit and was able to just use that for a runaround as well. So we hopped in that and were able to get across town, get that, and somewhere around 10 o'clock Friday night I was able to have the fuel pump and both fuel filters replaced, and got the car fired back up and was like, alright, ready for the morning. Should go well. Was I wrong? Saturday morning, go out, first session, was able to run a faster time than Friday right off the bat. Got through the whole session actually without much issue other than fighting the understeer a little bit yet. I had made took a little bit of camber out of the left front because the tire temps with power were just showing there was a little too much camber in that tire. But everything went well right up until the end of the session, coming to the checkered, and I come out of the last corner, go for third gear, and accelerate through that, and I go for fourth gear, and fourth gear's missing. Try to go back to third gear. Third gear is also missing. Fifth gear's there though, so I run fifth gear all the way around back until I get down to the slow section of the track, and was able to, okay, well, third and fourth are still missing, second gear's there, and got back into the pits. First gear was there, so I figured, well, since third and fourth are missing, it must be the pin on the shift fork that fell out, was my guess, but had to rip the whole transmission out to do that, which I started on immediately after getting back to the pits. Was able to get the transmission pulled out. A couple other guys chipped in to help hand me tools and stuff, and I got it down to where pretty much everything's memorized and how that sucker comes out. I was able to split the case, get the ends off, got everything, all the guts slid out far enough that I could get the 3/4 shift fork and rod out, and was able to find that yes indeed it was the pin. It had fallen into the bottom of the trans. To prevent that from happening again, we made a little tool so I could flare the ends of the roll pin, and so I have a little more bite in there. Got that put back together, got the entire transmission put together. Some of the other guys were running to town, picked up some new fluid for me to put back in the trans, got the trans all back in the car, filled with fluid, fired it up. Okay, good to go. It was about 4 hours start to finish on that. The other problem was, while I'm laying under there and I'm ripping the trans out, I glance up at my front left tire, and there's a huge chunk of it, probably about 10 or 12 inches long, that's all down to cords on the inside. And it was like, crap, I don't have any spares. I mean, what do I do? Well, whatever, I'm just going to finish the trans. So I got that done, and then I started looking at it. Nope, yeah, the other side, both tires were delaminated on the front end. They weren't like that the week before during testing. I don't know what, I think maybe it was a combination of the heat, the understeer, the banking of the oval. I don't know, but I mean, everything kind of came together where I totally ruined those two front tires. And looking at being done for the weekend, or heck, I'll take a chance, do a pit walk. I mean, it worked out for a brake rotor at Gingerman, so started doing a pit walk and walking around and just kind of snooping on everybody's tires. I just happened to be laying next to their cars and their pits and stuff, and get over to one guy had a white RX-7 and he's got a brand new set of tires laid next to it. So, but they happened to be the right size that I was looking for. He wasn't there, but his buddy was there. Buddy called him, got him over there. Asked for if he had a used pair of tires laying around, and guy was nice enough. He sold me the 2 used tires right off the front end of his car. Apparently he'd been broken for the weekend, but he had a brand new set of tires, so he sold me the two used ones right off of his car. I was able to hustle them things over to the tire changer guys. They got them changed, and I just made my last session. I rolled for Saturday. I literally rolled up, didn't even shut the engine off, and they were waving cars out. So Was able to make that pretty good. Happy with that, especially because I went out and started making a lap. And, well, of course, first I got up to speed coming around for the first flyer, and all of a sudden the thing's just shaking and vibrating. And so I shut her down and came into the pits, made sure somebody else gave it another once over just to make sure it wasn't anything loose. I just assumed it was out of balance wheel because it didn't have a balancer at the track. Everything looked fine apparently, so I went out, did another one, freaking drove through the shake, which I had pretty much everything above 80 miles an hour was shaking, so it was down the front stretch and through the banking, and got down the infield and then I didn't have a vibration. I was able to put together a decent lap through there, and I was able to run my fastest lap of the weekend, and got all done with that. Went back to the pits. The vibration was just, it was so much. I mean, I got that flyer in and it was like, nope, I'm done. I want to shake the thing to pieces. So I went back into the pits, swapped the tires front to rear to see if that would help at all, or if it'd change it, just as a verification of what was going on. Went back up to grid for one of the HPD sessions. They gave me a hardship lap, and yeah, sure enough, yeah, the vibration was still there, but it moved. I could feel way more through the drivetrain with it being on the rear. So went back in. I was done for the night, just hanging out. Sunday morning, we only had one session left. Actually swapped them back to the front because the vibration was worse on the rear, I felt, and I could drive through it on the front. So went out like that. I did a little bit of changed the rear suspension geometry a little bit. I moved up 2 holes in the rear because there was kind of a goofy transition from turning in to on throttle to get out of the corner. Like the car was turning and then hesitating, and then when I got on throttle, I tried to turn sharper again. And again, this is the first time I run with the sway bar off, so it could have been a big part of it. And I was just trying to tune around it, but went back out for morning session. Vibration was getting less and less the more laps I did. I think it was just kind of scrubbing that tire in and making it work for me. And I didn't run any faster, but I was running within 0.2 a lap. So, I mean, at least it was consistent. I was pretty happy with that, and it was a little easier to drive with that rear suspension change. Overall, for the weekend, this was the first time that I actually scored points in the street mod class. So I was 8 seconds off of the leader. Sean with the Evo. He ran a 58.4 and change, and I ran a 106.399. It's good. I scored points. The downside is that it's also the shortest track, so doubling that up to more closer to just over a 2-mile track like you normally run for a road course that put me at 16 seconds off. I was only 12 seconds off at Autobahn from the time that Jackie ran with the Supra. So really it comes down to those guys are turbo cars. I'm naturally aspirated still, and it cost me 4 seconds due to the altitude and miles of horsepower. If we're going to look at it as a pretty generalized, rule of thumb comparison there. So I scored points, but overall kind of disappointed with how the weekend went. I was really hoping not to have to wrench on it all weekend like last year, but it is what it is. I didn't have to do anything at Autobahn, and I guess this is just Big Speakers is not an event that likes my car a whole lot. So, but I don't know. See, street mod rules allow boosting cars under 6 liters now, so I don't know. I'm technically right at or just under 6 liters, so maybe I'm going to supercharge it or turbo. I don't think I want to run it all the time, but I might just be for going to big speed to see the air being so much better. Anyway, I'll wait for the new motor, get some testing with that. Got Heartland Motorsports Park coming up next for GridLife event, followed by Midwest Fest and Road America. In between those, I got Power Cruise USA that the Aussies put on out at Brainerd International Raceway. That's next weekend, and I'm doing the Wallenby, I guess I got right, hill climb down in Wisconsin end of September. So should be a fun rest of the year. About it. See you later.